The Cloudcast is sponsored by Intel Cloud for All, driving the creation of tens of thousands of clouds.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. Welcome 2016 to everybody. Excited to be back for a new year, our fifth year of podcasting. Just me tonight. Aaron is back on the road trying to solidify the SolidFire NetApp acquisition, so he should be back next week. First off, folks, again, want to thank you for 5 great years. Excited about what we're moving into here in 2016. Want to thank everybody who's made donations to the Krispy Kreme Challenge. About a month out from that one. Pretty excited about that every year. Our chance to give back to the North Carolina Children's Hospital. And last thing before we finish up some housekeeping, want to apologize to everybody. I know people have given us some feedback. The last couple of shows have had a little bit of audio issues. They're known issues. We've got them fixed. They should be all good for this show. But thank you, as always, for the feedback. So with that, we're going to bring back a good friend of the show, a frequent guest of the show, Alex Polvi, founder and CEO of CoreOS Linux. Welcome back to the show, Alex.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me again.
It's interesting. I think we've probably had CoreOS on various people. You've been on a couple of times. Brandon's been on. We had Brian Harrington, folks know him as Redbeard, about 6 months ago. And I think what we find especially with CoreOS, is you guys are changing so much. Most of our guests, once a year, once every 9-10 months, if they're doing updates, it's cool. You guys are changing so fast. How are things going at CoreOS? It's been 6 months, and it feels like it's been a very long time since we talked to you guys.
Yeah, in startup time, 6 months. Wow, it's that was ages ago. Right. It's so funny, when we're working here and talking about, wow, that happened 4 months ago. That feels like forever. But yeah, it's been definitely busy. Yesterday, I did a little calculation to figure out what we got done on our open source front, and in 2015 we shipped 247 releases, and so that's shipping about one release every day and a half, even through the weekends, for the entire year of 2015. So it's been a busy year, and everything's been going pretty well, but we still have a ton of work to do.
Right. Let's talk about that real quick before we jump into a bunch of the CoreOS stuff. I saw you sent that tweet out, and by itself, I sort of went, okay, that's cool. It's a good metric. And then I've seen, I don't know, maybe a half dozen companies who have sent out a similar kind of, tweet that said, hey, this is the number of releases we did for the year. It's the first time I've seen people actively putting that out there as an end of year metric. Is it something that is just a way for you guys to measure innovation, or is it something that's consciously being talked about now within the Valley or within software companies?
Oh, I thought it was a novel metric and kind of neat. I'd love to see how we stacked up against whoever else was tweeting it.
Yeah, I'll post a few of them. I know. I think I think the guys from ThreatStack put out about 11,000. But again, metrics can be funny that way because you guys might be doing full releases and they might be doing small patches and bug fixes. But it was interesting to me that people are putting releases out as a metric for the year. But
yeah. So
let's talk about where you guys are. Like I said, it's been about 6 months. Last time we talked to Redbeard, we were talking a lot about security. Tectonic is GA now. A lot of stuff going on with Kubernetes. You guys released Project Clair. Give folks a sense of what's the evolution been like, even the last 3 or 4 months of where you guys are going, from a solutions perspective, from a expanding security perspective, all those types of things.
Sure. So let's see, 6 months ago, we would have been in late June, or I guess early July, if my math is right. And that put us right around the Kubernetes 1.0 release. We bet on Kubernetes probably last March or so. We went pretty all in on it. And we're feeling more and more confident bet. That was something that was a little bit nebulous and a little bit tricky for us to do internally because, we had similar projects such as Fleet that we had built ourselves, but we took a step back and said, hey, we should invest, where we think the momentum is, and betting on Kubernetes is a little bit nebulous at the time, but at this point, I think, we're confident that Kubernetes is emerging, the kind of category leader in this container management infrastructure space, and continues to only uptick in velocity and adoption and so on. So to be able to participate in that community, as well as to be one of the early companies helping commercialize that technology, we're pretty happy with where we put our chips. Yeah. And so since then, we've GA'd Tectonic, and kind of, our whole belief is that this style of infrastructure, this thing, the style that's Google's infrastructure for everyone else, container-based, dynamically managed, standard hardware, that this unlocks a set of capabilities that will be extremely attractive to companies for a variety of reasons. But, our own selfish interest in it is around dramatically improving the security of companies' infrastructure. And we're just starting to see the fruits of that. And an example of it was at the Tectonic Summit, which was in I guess that would have been late November or December, and it feels like forever ago as well. That was just in December. We shipped a new capability called distributed trusted computing, which has really never been done before on server infrastructure, but is enabled because of this way, this model that's possible. And it's that type of thing that we're starting to really just see now that all the pieces are in place. We really have the end-to-end story in place now.
Yeah. And how do you guys talk all the time about, we have this goal of making the internet more secure. You're shipping things. I know we've talked in the past about kind of up and down the stack, the things you do. Do you have any way to kind of quantify that or measure whether you're moving towards that goal? That's not just, hey, we did projects, but I mean, do you get feedback from customers that say, hey, look, when we run our tests, or the number of patches we do, like any way that they sort of feel like it is more secure, or they can measurably show where their investment's going towards better security?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our approach has been like this GIFY, this Google's infrastructure for everyone else, is the approach that will help make things more secure. But before we can even get to that, we have to make the GIFY possible. Right. And so really over the past 2.5 years, we've been building all these different components to just make running this way of infrastructure even possible at all. And, in that amount of time, it's like a market creation phase. Before this, 2.5 years ago, nobody was even talking about this way of managing infrastructure. And now it's kind of clearly the way of the future. Right. And so I think we're transitioning more into that. And with that transition, now that there's like a market created, we'll start being able to show how the market is growing and changing things. Some of the metrics that we put out is just lines in the sand, or things, like with Clair, our container vulnerability scanning project. We found that like over 80% of the containers on our registry, Quay, had vulnerabilities, like bad ones, like Heartbleed was still, I think, in over 80% of them. Right. And just that level of visibility, it's like, okay, we opened up the visibility for the first time. That doesn't mean containers are any less or more susceptible to vulnerabilities. It just means that we actually have tools that now give us visibility into that for the first time. And now that we can see that, we can start to track those sorts of things. So again, our whole hypothesis is that this style of infrastructure enables us to move security forward. Where we're at in the life cycle of all this is this way of running infrastructure is now possible when it previously wasn't. And now we can get to work actually essentially exploiting it to make things better. Right.
Well, and I like the fact that I know we started the year, like you said, started last year. It felt like a lot of discussion about container formats, and there were some things that went on there. Obviously, those things have kind of gotten worked out with some of the open container initiatives. But it felt like the second half of the year was very focused on security. There was a lot of people that were talking about it. There were, like you talked about, there were platforms that were being expanded. There was technology that was being built. So from the perspective of you guys making bets, you talked about betting on Kubernetes. That's turning out to be a very good bet. You made an early bet to focus on security. It feels like that's becoming coming to the forefront, especially around containers, as opposed to sort of it being this nagging thing of going, well, they haven't figured it out yet. They're going to have to keep running in VMs, or I don't know if it's got user namespace issues. I mean, it feels like you guys really kind of tackled that head on, and I get the sense they like that, and they can feel much more comfortable that, like you said, the visibility's there, the tools are there, they're becoming very native to the overall environment.
Yeah, I mean, it's, a little over a year ago when we released Rocket, I think we really opened the discussion on container security in a pretty big way. And, if your goal is to secure the internet, the best way to get it to happen quickly is to have a bunch of different companies competing on security. Right. I mean, the net result of that is going to be better security at the end. So, I think we will win it, and I think we will continue to have the most kind of secure and production ready products out there. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, our goals are still accomplished if all the other vendors are making stuff better too. Right. And that's what we've seen happen. And, I kind of, give the team some praise in that, like, look, at the end, I will give the team some credit for starting this discussion around security a little over a year ago. And it was 2015, the biggest kind of subject within containers. And it's bigger than just us at this point. But I do think that the work that we've been doing has been driving the discussion, which in turn will create a more secure infrastructure environment for all companies, regardless if the products are created by us.
Right. No, absolutely. Let's shift gears a little bit. So, we talked about Tectonic a number of months ago, back when it was kind of announced. It's now GA. It's essentially, like you said, it's a way to get a completely commercial version of Giphy hardware and software all together, kind of ready to run. How has that changed the way that you guys engage with the market? Because for a long time, CoreOS, I mean, you guys had a way to deliver Linux, you had a way to deliver updates that way. So there was product-centric ways and operations involved. But now you're talking about a lot more, right? You're talking to a broader set of a customer's team. It's probably a much more robust solution. Like, how has that changed? How you guys go to market, how customers talk to you? Is it radically changing CoreOS, or is it just really the next logical step?
There's definitely some changes that happen, because when you're in market creation phase, it is definitely a kind of you envision the future and you invent things that enable it, and then you are now there. I think to go to cars versus horse and carriage sort of thing, what's happened is, let's say we pre-containers and distributed systems and everything, we were at the horse and carriage place, and we're like, all right, we think that cars are a possible thing because we've seen a couple around, and so let's start building engines and start building windows and start building antennas and all that stuff to make it possible, and take other people's tires and other people's rims, all the stuff, all the pieces you would need. Let's make sure they're in the market, so the possibility of building a car is possible. And then, okay, now we're at a place where all the different pieces are in place. Let's actually assemble cars and sell those to people too, right, while also building antennas and windshields and engines kind of on the side, and selling those a la carte to customers as well. But, in this analogy, those components, the antennas and windshields, are all the open source components that we are building and giving out. And the car is that package that we are selling to companies that don't want to be in the business of assembling it all together themselves. And we see both of those things as required solutions to be in market in order to enable this style of infrastructure, which then in turn will enable our goals around security. And so we're continuing to invest heavily in both. I mean, we have our open source projects in terms of staffing and so on internally makes up the majority of our engineering team, and in the commercial product front, we see that as a necessary product in order, one, for sustainability of our independent company, but also to help companies that don't have engineering teams that know how to assemble these things together, to be able to get the advantages of this style of infrastructure. So I'd say that it has been a transition for sure, just as we go through kind of this market creation and adoption side of things, but it's also exactly what I think every startup really goes through in any form of growth is constant change.
Right. Well, and I think it's a trend that we've been seeing, even in companies that are still, from an IT perspective, dealing with legacy applications. I mean, we see companies like Nutanix who put together hardware and software. We've seen companies like VCE putting this together, and I think you hit on the one thing, which is the really critical piece of it. It's companies don't necessarily always have the time to get up to speed on what's completely new. They may not have all the staff to do it, and so allowing your vendor partners or even the community to help you on those things that are sort of non-differentiated, but they get you to that point where you're going to start using technology to solve business problems is a big deal. It is a valuable value add into the marketplace, and it's good to see you guys are doing it in the space which is for more modern applications, containers, distributed systems, and so forth. So as best I can tell, and you guys, it was great when the CoreOS Fest in New York in December. You're talking about customers, you were talking about so forth. It seems to me, at least from what I can tell, that's public facing, your customers tend to be kind of digital-centric companies, customer-facing types of applications. Is that essentially the kind of the sweet spot profile, at least at this point, for CoreOS customers? I mean, they're trying to be more leading edge in terms of the types of applications they're building. A lot of it's customer-facing. They're more digital types of companies. Is that fair, or is that just the ones that right now are kind of out in the forefront?
I'd say it's kind of fair. What's happening is every single category out there is seeing a explosion in demand of digital and web services. Even the traditional businesses that you might not think would have, but just because of where we are in the age of computing, and every business has to rethink how are they handling digital and web services. Even the most traditional businesses, right. And so because of that, or I guess at the same time, you have these hyperscale guys, Google, Facebook, so on, getting into the traditional businesses as well. You have Google getting into cars, you have Facebook getting into payments. I mean, you have kind of it going both ways. And so I think what we're seeing on a very macro perspective is that every company is becoming a service provider of some form because of the explosion of digital and web and just really every category. And at the same time, their competitors are now these brand new web services companies that are just, Amazon is getting into every freaking category out there. And so, for these companies to compete, they're going to need the tool their infrastructure and the data centers in the similar way that the web hyperscale guys have, because that is one of their huge operational advantages. That's why an Amazon and a Google can run at such high efficiency. It's because of their infrastructure. It's why they can deliver products at such a rapid pace, because of their infrastructure. And so, yes, we are seeing it through web and digital, but it's in a bunch of traditional businesses as well. Now, the folks that are doing it in these businesses are typically the more avant-garde, areas of these enterprises, but they also, they also are the early adopters. So, we are on a traditional technology adoption curve here, but you can still have early adopters within big companies. Yep. So I guess to answer your question, yes, it is web and digital, but I would just argue that pretty much every category across the board has exploding demands in web and digital, which being an infrastructure business, it's the cars are invented. Now everybody needs a bridge, to get across.
So, the driver for this new infrastructure is obviously new types of applications. Who typically comes to you? Who's the buyer? Who's the decision maker? Is it the application teams that are kind of realizing the current infrastructure we might have in our business at an insurance company, an automotive company, a bank or something isn't right, so we need to sort of help drive that decision-making process? Or is it infrastructure teams, or is it these sort of blended, DevOps types of infrastructure plus application teams? Is there a profile that sort of fits this, or, when they come to you, or is it kind of still all over, and it's just people that know they have to solve a business problem?
Yeah, the place where we find, on the commercial front, where we find, pretty quick traction is when there's a project underway, with some sort of timeline around it, right? So it's, in that case, you're either, you're talking to, an infrastructure leader within a company, or a DevOps type person with a leader within the company, or you see these enterprise R&D groups pop up too that are following the trends and trying to figure out what to do next, and so on. So it's companies with newer projects that are ready to kind of try the next thing out with this new way of doing it. And remember, our ask is pretty big. We're saying you have a whole new platform and a whole new way of running your business and so on. And we know there's lots of benefits out there because we've seen these hyperscale guys do it, but the way you're doing business today and the way you'll be doing business after this is going to be quite a bit different. So it's a big ask for these guys. And so, it takes some time and we're working through it with them. We do have some products that are much more a la carte, like our Quay Enterprise, our container registry product. That's companies just go click, sign up and download and pay us, and we never talk to them. And that's much more easily bite-sized, consumable. And in that case, the users are all over the place. Whoever has a credit card that can expense a couple $100 a month, sort of thing.
Right. And how much do they come to you with a technology discussion versus how much do they come to you and they say, you're a community contributor, you're a technology provider, but you guys are also essentially a service provider, right? You run Linux for people, you update Linux for people. You talked about companies are becoming service providers. Like, how much of that drives the conversation where people go, like, I want to learn from your operational experience. I want to learn from kind of the best practices that you have. Is that part of a regular conversation you have with end customers?
Definitely. In any category, companies need help figuring it all out. I think a similar one a few years ago was like big data, or even cloud itself. There's kind of this creation phase where people know they need to have some sort of strategy and they're trying to figure it all out. And so we're definitely running into a lot of that. And, folks come to us because of their reputation around security and production and good quality software and so on. So fortunately, we've done very well in terms of folks showing up to check things out and figure out how to work together. And we continue to build and foster those relationships with folks as they go through their own journey to understand this.
Right. Now, you're a young guy, but this is your second startup or third startup. You had sold a company to Rackspace. You've been a CEO before. There's a lot of talk about sort of frothiness in the market. There's lots of talk about unicorns, and there was a little bit of the marketplace changed in terms of like financing. So interest rates went up a little bit at the end of the year. Are you guys hearing anything from your venture capitalists, from your investors who are kind of anything? Are you seeing them sort of saying, hey, the market's changing at all, or the guidance that they're giving you or some of your peers and colleagues that are startups, is that changing at all as you're moving into 2016, or are they still going, look, there is so much market change going on, you guys are well positioned, we're very comfortable with everything is, just kind of keep cranking along and everything is sort of where it was before? Is it changing or still the same, or just keep cranking along?
Well, my view on it hasn't changed at all, which is up market or down market. If you're a good company, you can find the resources you need to build your company. My first startup, we started in late 2008. So pretty much the bottom of all of this. I think maybe Q1 2009 was the bottom, but that was right when I was trying to do my first fundraise ever. And first being a green entrepreneur, and then two being at like the worst time from a financing perspective ever. I kind of have seen both sides of it now. And if, let's just say tomorrow something horrible happens and the market goes to complete, goes complete down the tubes, the venture money doesn't dry up. It doesn't just go away. It just gets more selective. Mm-hmm. The funds are already raised. They're done. So the capital needs to be deployed. It's just the investors get much more selective about what they do, which in turn, lowers competition for your deal, which in turn lowers valuations and kind of all of that sorts of stuff. But regardless, up market or down market, good companies will find the financing that they need to run. And so from our perspective, we just operate what does it take to be a good company and what do we need to do to be a good company, and kind of forget about optimizations in the market. All that the frothy valuations do is give you some optimizations around dilution for the amount of capital that you're bringing in. And a lot of it too could be detrimental to, the downside case, the bad case is all on the team. So raising it too high valuations too soon and so on, the investors will get their money back because they have their preferences, but it's all on the team, when there's an outcome, what does it look like? And so that, I think that in a lot of ways for things to cool off would be great. I mean, I plan to build a really great company. So it means like we will have an easier time hiring people and like have an easier time financing it and so on if there's less frothiness out there. Right. But yeah, I think that the market from our perspective, it'd be nice for it to cool off a little bit, just so it's a little bit easier to operate. Not going to lie, but so rent prices would go down in San Francisco a little bit, but I'm not sure if that's ever going to happen. Exactly. But I do think. But yeah, I guess the fundamental belief here is just that up market, down market, frothy in the tubes. If you build a good company, you will find the capital required to operate that company.
So let me wrap this up because you obviously are busy. You got a company to run. You guys have built a ton of stuff in the last 2.5 years. I mean, some really massive undertakings. Really defined a lot of what's going on in the marketplace, from tiny OSs to the big bets around Kubernetes and scheduling, big bets around security. What's the theme you're kind of pushing this year? Is it what are you telling the team to be focused on, even if it's the first 2 quarters and things are going fast? Is it a lot more to build in the kind of the big picture you have in mind? Is it execution? What's the theme for the first half of 2016 for CoreOS?
Sure. The first and foremost is to continue to move the world of distributed systems and systems programming and security forward. That's something we've done a tremendously good job at over the past few years here, and we have no intentions to lose that or slow down. We think there are a few more areas of white space we can fill in. It's getting pretty complete, but there's a couple big ones hanging that we hope to tackle. The infrastructure open source world, we have some work to do there and some pretty exciting projects coming. And then on the commercial business front, it's our time to really help our customers be successful with an end-to-end story, and help them really feel and achieve the benefits of this new way of running infrastructure that we've helped create over the past few years. And so I'd say that those two areas are the biggest. And then we have plenty of customers already on the products that we've shipped today, active paying folks on our Quay products, our support products, our early Tectonic customers. And, we need to continue to help them be successful and scale that out as well. So I guess to recap, it's continue to move the world of distributed systems, security, systems programming forward in the open source front, and bring some new projects to market that fill in the last few spots of white space, and then really just help our customers be successful, both our existing and our new ones.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, listen, I'm going to wrap it up with that. Any place the first couple of months that folks can run into you guys kind of out in the wild, if they're not already using the products, they're not using, but any place they might run into you guys face-to-face at events?
We have FOSDEM coming up here shortly. Okay. That should be a pretty big one over in Europe. And we're at events all over the place. Any of the kind of container and infrastructure events, we either have folks speaking or we'll have people there. We have our CoreOS Fest coming up here soon, and you should see some announcements on that as well. That was a pretty popular one last year, and so looking forward to kicking that off again this spring.
Good. Excellent. Well, listen, as always, love to have you guys on. Thank you so much for the time today. Great first show for 2016. And folks, thank you very much for listening, and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.